The dense jungles of the Amazon pulse with the rhythm of nature, a symphony of chirping insects, rustling leaves, and distant howls of unseen predators. Amidst the towering trees and winding vines, a shadow moved with near-invisible grace, stepping lightly over moss-covered roots. Sergei Kravenov, Kraven the Hunter, had never faced prey quite like this. His usual targets, big game, superheroes, even metahumans, had all fallen before his relentless pursuit. But this was something new. This was not a man. This was Hercules, son of Zeus. Kraven had spent months tracking the demigod's movements, watching as a legendary warrior wander the earth in his usual revelry, drinking, fighting, boasting. Kraven knew that no mere brute strength would win this battle. He would have to be smarter. His battle with Spider-Man had taught him that much superior strength could be overcome with strategy and patience. And now, under cover of night, he stood at the edge of an ancient Greek temple long forgotten in the heart of the jungle, where Hercules had chosen to make his camp. Kraven's fingers twitched over the hilt of his twin hunting knives. His body was ready, heart steady, muscles primed. The air smelled of damp earth, old stone, and something stronger, the muscular warrior who had fought and bled for centuries. He took a step forward, and the earth beneath his boot gave the faintest crunch. It was all the warning Hercules needed. With a thunderous roar, the walls of the temple shattered outward as a massive figure came crashing through the ancient stone. Hercules emerged like a force of nature, his bronze chest gleaming in the moonlight, muscles rippling beneath his skin. His lion skin cloak fluttered over his shoulders, and in his massive hands, he clutched a gilded club thick as a tree trunk. So, the hunter finally shows himself. Hercules bellowed, his voice rolling like thunder. His grin was wide, teeth flashing like a predator's. I thought I smelled something besides old stone and jungle rot. Kraven didn't waste a second. With the speed of a striking panther, he lunged. He twisted low, avoiding the first swing of Hercules' club. The force of the swing alone split the earth, sending cracks splintering outward from the impact. Kraven spun, his knives flashing, and slashed across Hercules' ribs. The sharp edge bit deep, drawing golden ichor, the blood of the gods. Hercules grunted, surprised. He glanced down at the wound, then let out a booming laugh. You drew first blood, a rare thing indeed. Hercules roared. Then, faster than a man his size should be capable of moving, he lashed out with a colossal fist. Kraven barely dodged in time. The punch missed his skull by inches, but the shockwave alone sent him flying backward, crashing through vines and debris. He rolled with momentum, landing on all fours, his muscles burning from the sheer force of the impact. But he didn't stop. Kraven leaped, using the trees as his battlefield. He sprang from branch to branch, moving in a blur, vanishing into the jungle canopy. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, locked onto Hercules, studying his every move. Running already? Hercules called, resting his club on his shoulder. Come now, Hunter. I thought you sought a fight. Or perhaps you are just another mortal who thinks he can match a god. Kraven smiled to himself. The taunt was expected. Hercules was a warrior, proud and fearless, but that would be his weakness. Kraven didn't fight on emotion. He fought to win. From the shadows, he pulled a small blow dart from his belt, dipped in a paralytic poison, strong enough to drop an elephant, not lethal to a demigod, but enough to slow him down. Kraven moved in silence, his body blending into the darkness. With a precise flick of his wrist, the dart shot forward, aimed for Hercules' exposed neck. But just before it could strike, Hercules caught it. The demigod's fingers snapped shut around the dart with godlike reflexes, crushing it into dust. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing as he turned toward the shadows. Ah, clever. A hunter's trick. But I have fought tricksters before, little man. Then, with impossible speed, Hercules launched his club. Kraven barely dodged. The golden weapon tore through the trees, smashing a half-dozen trunks like twigs, sending splinters flying like daggers. One shard caught Kraven in the shoulder, slicing deep. He snarled, but he didn't slow. He lunged from the trees, landing behind Hercules. In one swift motion, he drove both knives deep into the demigod's back. Hercules roared in pain, his golden blood spraying onto the dirt. But instead of staggering, instead of falling, he grabbed Kraven by the throat. With one arm, Kraven's eyes widened as he felt the sheer, unrelenting strength of the Son of Zeus. It was like being crushed by a mountain. His knives still stuck in Hercules' back, but they did nothing. "You are strong, Hunter," Hercules rumbled, his grip tightening, but not strong enough. Then, with a single earth-shaking motion, Hercules hurled Kraven through the air. The hunter smashed through stone pillars, hitting the jungle floor with a bone-crunching thud. He gasped, forcing himself up on one knee. His body screamed in protest, ribs fractured, muscles torn. But his mind was still sharp. He watched as Hercules approached like an unstoppable force, footsteps shaking the ground. Kraven wiped blood from his lips, his eyes burning with fierce determination. He had faced gods before, and he had survived. And he would not let this be any different. Kraven let out a growl, his adrenaline surging. He reached into his belt, pulling out one last trick. A vial of Kraven's bloodroot, a mystical serum derived from the rarest jungle plants, designed to push his body past human limits. As Hercules lifted his club for the final strike, Kraven crushed the vial in his palm and drank deep. His eyes flashed gold, his body ignited with raw power. And as the two warriors charged at each other once more, the real battle was just beginning. Kraven felt the fire surge through his veins, a primal power unlike anything he had ever known. His muscles bulged, infused with unnatural might. His senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The jungle around him became clearer than ever, the air crackling with life, and his heartbeat thundered in his ears like a war drum. The Kraven's bloodroot had done its work. For the first time, Kraven felt as if he could stand toe-to-toe with a god. Hercules charged, his club swinging in a golden arc. But this time, Kraven didn't just dodge, he countered. With a sudden burst of speed, Kraven met Hercules' attack head-on, twisting his body just enough to avoid the full brunt of the club. His hands lashed out like a striking panther, one knife slicing toward Hercules' throat, the other driving toward his ribs. Clang! The impact sent shockwaves through the jungle. Hercules barely managed to twist at the last second, the blade missing his jugular by a hair. But the second strike hit home. Kraven's blade plunged deep into Hercules' side, golden ichor spilling onto the earth. The demigod let out a roar of pain and fury. Kraven grinned. He had drawn blood again. But before he could press his advantage, Hercules retaliated with a roar like an earthquake. Hercules slammed his fist into Kraven's chest. Boom! Kraven was sent hurtling through the jungle, his body smashing through 3 trees before skidding to a stop in the dirt. He coughed, tasting blood. His ribs were cracked, maybe broken, but the serum kept the pain at bay. Kraven forced himself up, spitting blood onto the ground. His hands dug into the earth, muscles trembling but refusing to quit. Hercules approached, blood running from his side, but his expression was furious, yet amused. "You fight well, mortal," the demigod admitted, wiping the blood from his wound. "Better than most, but let's see how you fare when I stop holding back." Kraven barely had time to react. Hercules vanished in a blur of speed. Before Kraven could blink, a fist crashed into his stomach with the force of a cannonball. Kraven gasped. His entire body convulsed as he was lifted off the ground, his organs slamming against his ribs. His enhanced strength allowed him to withstand far more than an average man. But Hercules was beyond strength. He was a force of nature. Before Kraven could recover, Hercules grabbed him by the ankle and swung him. Smash! Kraven's body was driven into the ground with bone-shattering force. The jungle floor cracked beneath him, sending a plume of dust and shattered stone into the air. But Hercules wasn't done. The demigod lifted Kraven's body and hurled him into the temple ruins. Boom! Kraven hit the stone pillars like a wrecking ball, smashing through them before crumpling to the ground in a heap of dust and blood. His entire body screamed in agony. His mind spun. The serum had made him stronger, but not strong enough. Hercules strode forward, unfazed. "A fine effort, Hunter, but your strength is borrowed. Mine is eternal." Kraven growled, shaking his head. He refused to accept defeat. With a snarl, he forced himself to his feet, wiping the blood from his mouth. He couldn't outmatch Hercules in strength, but he still had skill, a hunter's instincts. He lunged, aiming for Hercules' exposed throat. But this time, Hercules was ready. The Son of Zeus sidestepped. With blinding speed, he caught Kraven's wrist mid-strike, and with one brutal motion, he snapped it. Crack! Kraven's scream echoed through the jungle. His knife fell from his useless hand. Hercules pulled him close, their faces inches apart. You have courage, mortal, but courage alone does not win wars. Then, with earth-shattering force, Hercules drove his forehead into Kraven's skull. Crunch! Kraven's vision exploded into white. His body went limp as he collapsed to the ground. Blood ran from his forehead, mixing with the dirt. His breath came in ragged gasps. His body refused to move. Hercules towered over him, gripping his club. For a moment, silence filled the battlefield. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then, Hercules sighed. You sought to hunt a god, but you are only a man. He turned away, shaking his head. You should have stayed in the realm of mortals. Kraven struggled to lift his head, his vision blurry, his strength fading. He wanted to fight. He wanted to rise. But his body had nothing left. Hercules slung his club over his shoulder and began walking away. He had won. And Kraven the Hunter, for the first time in his life, had been hunted down.